Native wildflowers for native wildlife. Welcome to the Lake Erie Arboretum at Frontier Park, or LEAF. We are excited that your class will be helping us with our Native Wildflowers for Native Wildlife project for our Arboretum. What is an Arboretum? An Arboretum is a museum of living trees. The Lake Erie Arboretum at Frontier Park has more than 1,000 trees. Over the next couple of months, you will be helping us to grow native wildflowers for our Arboretum. You will be starting the seeds of native wildflowers in your classroom and watching them grow. You will be responsible for taking care of them as they grow. In May, you will bring your wildflower seedlings to the Arboretum for the annual Leaf Grow Green field trip. As part of your day in the park, you will plant your wildflower seedlings in our new wildflower meadow, where they will beautify the park and help to feed wild animals. In this video, we will be talking about native wildflowers and their value for native wildlife. What does native mean? The word native refers to a place of origin. Some plants and animals are native to Pennsylvania. They have lived here for thousands of years. These plants and animals originated in Pennsylvania. People did not bring them here. For example, the eastern hemlock is our Pennsylvania state tree. It has lived in Pennsylvania for thousands of years and is native throughout the state. The mountain laurel is the Pennsylvania state flower. It is native to the mountain regions of Pennsylvania. There are many plants and animals that are native to Pennsylvania. Goldfinches and cedar waxwing are birds that are native to Pennsylvania. The eastern cottontail rabbit and the eastern chipmunk are mammals that are native to Pennsylvania. The eastern bumblebee and the swallowtail butterfly are insects that are native to Pennsylvania. Some plants and animals are introduced. Introduced plants and animals were brought to Pennsylvania from some other place by humans, sometimes on purpose and sometimes by accident. Introduced plants are not native to Pennsylvania. They are native to somewhere else. Many of the trees and flowers in gardens in Pennsylvania are introduced. Just because a plant or animal is introduced does not necessarily mean that it is bad for our environment. As long as they do not hurt plants or animals in their new home, introduced plants and animals are okay. The cherry tree and the honeybee were both introduced to Pennsylvania. Native plants and animals are very important to our environment. Native plants provide food for many native animals. Animals depend on native plants for their survival. They either eat parts of plants for food, or they eat other animals that eat plants for food. What parts of plants do animals eat? Some animals, like insects or deer, may chew on the leaves of plants for food. Animals like beetles or rabbits may chew on the stems of plants as well. Some insects will visit the flowers of plants to eat the pollen. Plant pollen is full of protein, so it is important for animals to grow. The legs of this tiny bee are covered with pollen. Some insects visit flowers to drink nectar. Nectar is full of sugar, and it is an important source of energy. This butterfly used its long proboscis to drink nectar from a Mexican sunflower. Let's look at a few native plants and the animals that depend on them. Here we see a picture of milkweed. This monarch caterpillar depends on plants in the milkweed family. The caterpillars can only feed on plants like milkweed or butterfly weed. Here we see a very young monarch caterpillar. The plants of the milkweed family are poisonous to most animals, but not to monarch caterpillars. As they eat these plants, they take the poisons from the plant into their bodies. The poison from the plant helps to protect the caterpillars from birds that might like to eat them. If a bird were to eat a monarch caterpillar, the bird would get very sick and throw up. The next time that bird sees the bold black and yellow stripes of a monarch caterpillar, they will remember feeling sick and leave that caterpillar alone. When the caterpillar has grown enough, it will leave the milkweed and crawl to a nearby plant and suspend itself from a branch in a letter J position. The caterpillar will form a chrysalis. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar transforms into a monarch butterfly in a process called metamorphosis. For a monarch butterfly, metamorphosis takes 10 to 14 days to complete. As it gets close to completion, the orange and black color can be seen through the chrysalis walls. When the adult monarch butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, it can drink nectar from many different types of wildflowers, including native plants like milkweed and the goldenrod pictured here. They can also drink nectar from non-native flowers like this zinnia. But the female butterfly will return to milkweed or butterfly weed to lay her eggs, because her babies will only be able to survive on these plants. Students will help to grow swamp milkweed and butterfly weed for our wildflower project. Another type of native caterpillar that depends on wildflowers is the fritillary. Fritillary eggs are laid on wild violets, and the caterpillars feed on the leaves. The adult fritillary can feed from many different types of flowers, but she will only lay her eggs on violets. You may have violets growing in your lawn. Some people consider wild violets to be a weed in their lawn, but violets are very important for fritillary caterpillars to survive. We already have many violets growing in the Arboretum. Many bees also depend on wildflowers. Bees use nectar for energy, and honeybees convert nectar into honey. Bees also use pollen as food, and many wild bees use pollen to feed their young. Wildflowers can provide seeds for birds to feed on through the winter months. Here you see a goldfinch feeding from the seeds on a purple coneflower plant. Finally, native plants can help provide homes for animals. Some insects live inside the hollow stems of wildflowers over the winter. Many insects will lay their eggs on parts of wild plants. But animals don't just eat plants. Some animals also help plants reproduce. Many insects, including bees and butterflies, will help to pollinate flowers when they visit to eat pollen or drink nectar. Pollination occurs when pollen is transferred from the anthers of a flower to the stigma of a flower. Most insect pollinators pick up the pollen on their bodies and move it from the anthers to the stigma. Sometimes the anther and stigma are on the same plant, and sometimes the anther and stigma are on different plants of the same type or species. Bees are exceptionally good at moving pollen because it can stick to the branched hairs of their bodies. Not all plants are pollinated by animals. Some plants, like pine trees and oaks, are pollinated by the wind. The pollen is moved from male cones or flowers to the cones or female flowers on air currents. These plants must produce very large amounts of pollen. After a flower is pollinated, it will produce seeds. The seeds are capable of growing into new plants. In many cases, the seeds develop inside of fruits or other crops that are important foods for people and animals. The wildflowers that we are growing for our project are plants that are very important to pollinators and other animals. In Pennsylvania, pollinators include insects like bees, butterflies, and some beetles, wasps, and flies. Some other animals, such as birds and mice, can also serve as pollinators. Pollinators are important because they ensure that plants will be able to produce seeds. Many of the trees in our arboretum, including cherry and magnolia, require insects for pollination. Many of the foods that we eat also require pollinators. Apples, peaches, cherries, blueberries, and strawberries all require pollinators. We have a fruit tree orchard at the Arboretum, next to the new wildflower meadow. These fruiting plants only bloom for a short period of time, but the wildflowers will ensure that the pollinators have food throughout the growing season. The wildflowers that you will grow were selected because they will do well in Erie, and they will be important food for the insects and other wildlife that live in our city. In the next video, we will talk about seeds and how they grow. And you will get instructions on how to use your wildflower kit to start seeds in your classroom.